Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to Let's Chit the Chat podcast. I hope you're all doing well. You're in lockdown. Shaitan's in lockdown for this Ramadan. May Allah accept all your good deeds. Now, this is a new series where we'll be exploring various topics and current issues, which concerns everyone, especially young people. So the samosas can wait, inshallah. So let me introduce you to our special guest, Tariq Sirajzadeh, who works at Luton and Dunstable Hospital. He's a pharmacist and 4 years qualified. Assalamu alaikum, Tariq. How are you?
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. How are you, Brother Azam? Jazakallah khair for having me.
No problem at all, inshallah. Moving on, we have Aadhil Rizvi, another special guest who's a 50th medical student. Assalamu alaikum, Aadhil. How are you doing?
Wa alaikum assalam. Jazakallah for having me, Abdul Azam.
No problem at all, inshallah. Now, to our regular co-host, Pakistan's answer to Ellen DeGeneres, Aadhil Malik. How you doing, Aadhil?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, I'm good. I hope all the viewers at home are well as well, inshallah.
Good, alhamdulillah. We couldn't get Piers Morgan on the show, but we do have Hisham. What's going on, Hisham?
Assalamu alaikum. All good, alhamdulillah.
No.
Piers Morgan is, going a bit far for me, but yeah. Thank you for having me, and inshallah, this is a good platform for us. I think we have two distinguished guests in our community, so we have Tariq and we have Aadhil. We've all grown up, alhamdulillah, together, and they would be a testament to how our generation is growing up, alhamdulillah. So we have really good Tariq in the pharmacy field, and we have Aadhil in the medical field. So inshallah, we'll be covering a few things today. One would be, first part would be to give our youngsters in the future who are growing up now, aspiring to be professionals like yourselves in your respective industries, especially sort of in a pharmaceutical point of view, as well as I would say from a medical point of view as well. So in a sense, making them understand why you chose medicine, or why you chose pharmacy, what was your reasoning behind it, what future do you see in it, that kind of thing. And then we'll move on to, inshallah, to the main topic, obviously, a current issue that we're all going through, and possibly a reason why we are having this chat show as well. It could be. Without further ado, which is regarding COVID, and so we'll be getting your point of views as well, alhamdulillah, and our Aadhil and Azam's point of views as well, inshallah. And we'll go into some mythbuster questions, such as, do you wash your groceries? So inshallah, we'll get that from your point of views as well. So inshallah, the first question would be, ideally, we'll start off with Aadhil Rizvi, who is a 50th medical student. Why medicine? Why did you want to get into medicine? Take us to where it started, inshallah.
Starting questions I got asked in my interview, but rather than going into my personal statement now, I don't know. I think for me, early on, I actually didn't want to even do medicine at all. I always wanted to do like pilot or go into business because, my whole family's in business. Like no one in my family extended as well. They're not really academics, right? So I think it's possibly my mum's big influence. She always admired doctors. She had gone through a lot of medical issues in her own life. So it's just I think it was just kind of a natural thing from there on. All the stories are being told by my family about how what mum had gone through and things like this. So I think it was just a natural tendency to be this looks like a interesting career. And then, subhanAllah, I think once I entered, I think it was sixth form, I had the chance to go to a hospital for work experience. And that's the thing that really sold it to me, really, because I've worked in my dad's shop before, and I've done odd jobs here and there. And, I've some of my cousins by that stage, some of them had become, not slating anyone who's an engineer or accountant, but I don't know, it just didn't seem like my kind of thing. And then, when I just saw medicine and how active it was as a role, and I think there's so many sides of medicine that isn't just present in another career. So you've obviously got the learning side, academic side, which I really like, because you always they say you're always learning something new, and trust me, you're actually always learning something new, and it's like a blessing and a curse in a way, because you just from Islamic point of view, always like bowled over by like how subhanallah, like amazing Allah's creation is. That's the most amazing thing, because maths, engineering is all man-made stuff, right? But when it comes to the human body, when it comes to how everything works, this is something Allah has given us like a gift. And like for me, the other side of things, it's like a very like a people orientated career. It's not like boring, like you're always on your feet talking to people, having a good chat. You get to work in a large team. That's always quite fun as well, and it's always active. There's always something for you to do. Of course, it's got a lot of downsides, don't get me wrong, but like when I weigh up, for me, it's just just suited me really well, mashallah. That's the main thing that sold it to me. Yeah.
So is it something that you would say, is it a professional role that you really, when our youngsters are making decisions for their future, is it something that they must have sort of, I would say, passion to do it? Is it something that once you get into it, you must be fully committed?
Yeah, I would say more so with anything really, because it's like making a commitment to memorize the Quran. For example, let's say you start memorizing one of the largest, so let's say Surah Baqarah, right? That's like what, three juz or something long. It's quite a long surah, so it won't be like really fair for it to be like memorized in 2 pages and leave it like that. It's a bit like medicine as well. As soon as you've started doing, as soon as you're on this journey, you kind of need to be continuously like self-improving. You need to be checking yourself. So yeah, from an early age, you do need to find a passion for it. But that doesn't mean like, let's say you're in year 12, year 13, year 11, and you're like, I haven't been preparing my grades as well and things and stuff like that. You have loads of opportunities to try and get into medicine. But once you're on that path of, on medicine, then, you do need a lot of drive. You do need a little commitment. That is true.
I mean, would you say, when you said going from make certain decisions in certain parts of your career, would you say, like, for example, a 25, 30-year-old, is that too late to get into medicine after that?
No, actually, one of my good, like, most of my friends are older than me. Some of my friends on the course are 40-year-olds, 30-year-olds. So that's one thing that's actually not known in medicine. They think it's a young man's thing. It's not like that. So I've got like a friend of mine who worked for IBM and, the computing company. And I think he was about 29. He must have been like 28 years old. And then he was like, the money was very good. Everything was like, life was really like exciting and stuff like that. He was a white guy, really good friend of mine. And then he's like, he just didn't find meaning with his life. Like, he's like, there's nothing going on for me, So he's like, I want to start medicine. So he just converted his degree, and you do an accelerated course, which is around 4 years. And now he's on the same year as me, and we're going to be graduating together, inshallah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it can be something that anyone can do. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, again, it's one of those roles that, like you said, you can have a career change. Is more of, you don't really see how important a doctor's role, how fulfilling it is, until you actually on the other side of receiving it. Yeah. So especially when you're in a hospital and you go through, like you said, your mother, she had some experiences, and then that instigated you to get into medicine. So I think a doctor's role is extremely inspiring, to be honest with you. And in this day and age, I think this COVID-19 in many ways has been a blessing. I mean, all due respect and to the people who have lost their lives and who are suffering still. But in general, I think it has been an eye-opener for who are the people that are really there for the country when it needs the most. I think the medical profession, especially the NHS in this country, we are blessed to have such a system with all its flaws, mind you. It has flaws. Management, not the people who work in it, I would say. It's more of a political issue. We don't want to get into it too much, but I would say I think it's gotten to a point where we really see how important the medical staff are, from all the way from doctors, surgeons, to even to the nurse. I think it's one of those eye openers. And do you think after this, with that in mind, we would see an influx of potential people who are inspired, youngsters, in order to get into that medical field?
I really do hope so. I mean, that's a really good viewpoint, and I've actually thought of it like that, actually. But I would say, like, once you actually start working medicine, you'd see how much, like, as a inshallah future doctor, you depend on everyone else. Like, Tariq's a pharmacist, right? Like, doctors are famed, like young doctors are famed for making so many mistakes. I mean, the pharmacy, the prescription, that's the main thing that like stops you killing from someone, right? You don't want to get anything wrong there. You don't want to be giving someone like 100 paracetamol tablets when you wrote like one by accident. So, and these guys are like, massive sources of knowledge that, doctors just don't have access to. At the same time, nurses, without nurses, there is no NHS, without porters, there's no NHS. So there's all these different jobs, receptionists, things like that. So, I think it could be quite like an Asian mentality that, oh, you need to become doctor. But that's, I think one important thing to consider is like, just look at the medical professional in general now, subhanAllah, because there's so many things in there. There's midwifery, nursing, things like that. So I would say, when people hear of medicine, they're like, oh, my day is what every Asian wants. I think maybe they're, disregarding a bit too quickly. The reason maybe one of the reasons is because, mashallah, it's a great, career. It's, and even in the Quran, it just says, everyone knows saving a life is like saving all of humanity. But, it's easy to say that, but when you actually go and, contribute in doing it, it's a very different experience altogether. Like,
and I think, especially like the role of a nurse, I think in recent years, they've upskilled quite a lot. The pressure that was on doctors because of the scarcity of doctors in this country, I would say has upskilled nurses. And I think from my point of view as well, that we shouldn't, especially from an Asian mentality, we shouldn't look at Asian or even, I don't know about Middle Eastern or other countries, look up on the role of a nurse as a taboo role. Okay, he's a nurse, he's not good. But we don't realize what an important part they play in function of a hospital or even
extremely important.
GP.
I think one thing is like maybe people don't understand is like, I'll give you an example is, when we're on the wards, right? Every morning at like about 8 a.m., 9 a.m., even as early as 7:30 a.m. Like recently I was on my pediatrics rotation just before the COVID issue. So for the little babies, right? I was in a ward called SCBU, which is Special Care Baby Unit. So these are babies like this big, like tiny babies, very cute babies, and all kinds of problems, like their lungs haven't developed, their brain hasn't developed, all these issues, right? And you're on this ward round with a doctor who's like a big consultant for 40 years, and you're with like another registrar, which is someone who's just under him, who's been there for like 10 years. And then you're there with a junior nurse who's just started like yesterday, and then you're with another senior nurse who's been there for longer than the consultant has. And everyone is brought down to the same level. Like everyone's opinions are taken account of. I mean, that's the good. I mean, obviously there's downsides of NHS, like you mentioned, but from what I've seen, mashallah, like if there is a good team, and I think the NHS is making proactive steps in some ways to become very inclusive, everyone is on the same level. It's not like it is hierarchy, but it's not as, I would say, cutthroat as, let's say, the corporate world is. Maybe when you're in the upper leagues of the NHS, that is true. But when it comes to actually, treating patients and working as a team, mashallah, it's amazing. So, that taboo role of, a nurse is not maybe someone, is just someone who maybe just, cleans up someone's urine or just gives them orange juice. That's gone. Like, I've learned more about the caring aspect from nurses than I have from doctors. I've learned more, maybe knowledge from doctors, but I've learned more to be caring and a human from a nurse. That's the main thing.
That's a great thing, mashallah. Thank you for that good insight into that medical field. We'll come back to that, inshallah. So on to our next guest, Tariq, who is a 4-year medical profession and a University of Hertfordshire alumni with me. So he was the only person I could talk about the uni with him in our whole community that I knew of. So Tariq, do you want to tell me a little about why you got into pharmacy?
Well, like the brother Rizvi said earlier, that this is a personal statement question that's coming back to haunt us again. You have to say this over and over again, every time you go to an interview, or, every time you've had a university interview, or even for a job interview, why is it that you want to do pharmacy? To me, from about GCSE age, I was actually quite fixated on pharmacy, and I don't know why. Till this day, I think, what was the reason for me actually getting into pharmacy? But what I would say is, the important thing about choosing a career in terms of what it is that you want to do is that as long as you are committed and as long as you are interested in that field of things, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes things easy, and nothing is impossible. There are, brothers that have come to, to this country, like myself. I, came here and started doing my GCSEs with very little English. And if somebody was to ask me on my first day, what was it that I wanted to aspire to, I probably couldn't say much. But with all the help and the support that was available, the community that was there, alhamdulillah, the Sri Lankan masjid that was there, having to, meet the brothers who were well educated, who could, we could look up to as a role model, that actually played a role in making my mind up to want to do something good. And to me, pharmacy stood out in the sense that it was something that I could relate to. It was something universal, like Brother Rizvi said, medicine is medicine wherever you go. And the same thing with pharmacy. Pharmacy is pharmacy wherever you go, whether you're in the UK or Afghanistan or Sri Lanka or in the US. Medications don't change. Fine, you get developments in medicines here and there, but the main aspect of it is that you are using your knowledge to help the most vulnerable in the community. And that was the kind of the drawing factor for me. And I make dua for the circle of friends that were around me and the teachers that I had, but in particular to my father. He actually, we used to sit down and have a chat as to what it is that I like in school, what it is that I want to do. From about GCSE age, I would say I can remember very clearly sitting down with my father and having to talk about what it is that I want to do. Is it engineering? Is it medicine? Is it something to do with science? Because I liked my science subjects, and because I did relatively well in science and maths compared to other subjects, I thought this is my strength, so why not just lead on to this? And it is something I like, and it's something I will enjoy. Alhamdulillah, that was the starting point, and come 12 years down the line, alhamdulillah, I'm still in that field. I enjoy it, and I love it. Every day I go to work, I enjoy being part of a diverse team of great people, having to work alongside very knowledgeable doctors, nurses, other people from the multidisciplinary team, like physiotherapists and paramedics. It is something that I have enjoyed. I am enjoying on a daily basis, and I'm learning a great deal from it, and alhamdulillah for that. And like I said, the reason why I kind of went into pharmacy was the aspect of it being able to help the ill and the vulnerable, and understand what it is that a Muslim can actually do to help the community in their professional life, and give back to the community what it's provided for us. So yeah,
that's good.
If I may interject for one question for both of you, obviously given the COVID-19 stuff, have you found any newfound appreciation for some of the work you're doing, or just the work generally going on around you, or maybe discovered something about yourself in terms of how important your work is, or anything along those lines, really?
So the one thing is, and I'm sure you've all seen this, thank you to the NHS, and we hear this a lot, we see it a lot, and it does make us feel good. It does actually make us happy, and it's good to know that people appreciate the fact that we are doing something to help the situation. It is not an individual job. NHS is actually linked with hundreds, if not thousands, of other organizations which make it actually run, and it is from anyone the common folk to the most experienced consultant that actually makes this job a reality. And I would say every bit of every kind of nice gesture that we see, it gives us that positive energy to actually go that step further, go into all these different wards and seeing how people are not able to help themselves, but you are there, and that people will appreciate once they actually get discharged, once they actually go home. They will know that the doctors were there for us. They will know that the nurses were there for us. they would know that the pharmacist folks were there for us. So it is actually an eye opener, and it is a good to know that we have such a system and such public that actually appreciate the work that we in the NHS actually do.
Yeah, of course.
No, I fully
Mashallah, it's great.
Yeah, no, the same thing, brother.
Especially, it's great from hearing both of you, especially within all the rewarding careers in healthcare. Because usually people would be like, I don't know, you could be whatever you like better, doctor or engineer. That's how they come across, anyways. But inshallah, moving on. They're both difficult careers to get into, as we all know. So, what advice would you give to our listeners who are thinking about pursuing a career in this field? If we can start with Aadhil Rizvi, inshallah.
Well, what I would say is, for one thing in terms of medicine is, I think with all careers, before you go into it, like Brother Tariq was mentioning, one of the most important things you need to have is interest and passion inside it, right? So, before you go and actually go about doing it or actually getting onto the pathway of medicine or pharmacy or whatever it is, do a work experience, go to a hospital or go to a GP or go and see what it's like and just view and see what the day-to-day working aspect is, because it's quite easy to watch a movie or something on TV and just get like a different idea of how it is, or if you go to your GP you think, oh, this is what all that GPs do, and you kind of get turned off by it all. So you need I would say the best perspective. And I was actually given this advice by a boy when I was thinking of applying to like different degrees and stuff. He was like, do the work experience, see what it's like first. So once you've done that, I would say then, what you need to do is actually understand what's required of you to get into it. So, with medicine, it is one of the most competitive courses in the country, which is an unfortunate thing. And there are a limited number of medical schools that take a very limited number of people. I think like engineering maybe has about 80 universities, medicine's about 20 or something. So it is quite a lot less, unfortunately. And the numbers are also quite less. And you're usually having to, compete with quite competitive and high graded people as well. So, prepare early. Like all things, prepare early. If you prepare early by means of, exams, by means of, your own self-confidence. So, one thing I like to do in my own family is like, my little cousins that are like coming up in age. I mean, I've got quite a lot of young, like male cousins, got like 8 or 9. So like a whole big family, like in my local area, right? So I tell all of them, like, go work in like a department, don't go work in like a shop, or go work at Sports Direct or Debenham, something. Why? Go learn how to speak with real humans other than like just your friends, go and get a learning experience of how it is to become a mature adult, or like, if you just sit in home, it's fun playing games and all that kind of, that's completely fine, or go in mosque, but maybe start your own thing, maybe do a little business on the side, start tutoring, do something to start gearing up with life. And then you can start thinking of your big degree, because that's a big commitment, right towards the end. Because the studying and things, like Brother Tariq was saying, nothing's impossible with Allah's help. If you're asking dua, that's the main thing I would say, of course. You need to depend on Allah for everything. I wouldn't have got nowhere near where I am today, or my family, wherever it is today, without Allah's blessing, without Allah's mercy. That's the main thing I'm thankful for. And I think out of everything in this coronavirus, everyone's, clapping out for the NHS. We need to be so thankful to Allah as well for keeping us in good health for all this time.
It's very important.
That's I think one of the most important things. So being grateful is one important thing I would say. Do work experience and prepare early. So studying, anyone can study. You just pick up a book, start watch a video on how to study, and we'll go tutoring or tuition or go school, do your homework. Anyone can do that, but it's the preparation ahead of time and thinking outside just an exam paper or exam prep or things like that. That's what will mold you to become a better person when you start your degree or when you start your job, I would say.
Exactly, as they say, prepare to fail to prepare. Exactly. So inshallah, Tariq, Jazakallah, Tariq, can we get your 2 pence?
Can you repeat the question again, please?
Yeah, sure. They're both difficult careers to get into. So what advice would you give our listeners who are pursuing pharmaceutical?
To be honest, what brother Aadhil said is pretty much it would apply to literally every career. And medicine is probably one of the highest things that you could actually aspire to. and anything that comes, secondary to that would be that bit easier. But the concept of actually, wanting and fixating your mind on something, I would say that, as the earlier you start, the earlier you accept the fact that this is what you want to do, the more likely it is that you will actually achieve that target. And it, one of those things, some of the brothers, that I know, initially applied to do a different course, and then because they didn't get into that course, they actually opted in to do something like, for example, pharmacy or biomedical science. And after completing their degree, they came out and they asked themselves that question: why did I even do this subject? So the first thing would be, you need to be content with your decision, and you need to be able to see yourself actually practicing that, job role that you're actually wanting to do. So if you are going to be studying medicine, take a few weeks of your time in the summer. Take a week of your half term or 5 days of your half term to go and shadow a GP, to go and shadow a GP secretary, maybe, to shadow someone in a nurse, for example. See what it's actually like. What is real life like as a doctor? You may not like it. I know people that actually did a degree for, a pharmacy degree for 4 years. They did their pre-registration year for a year. After working as a pharmacist for just over a year, they actually just stopped being a pharmacist, because it wasn't actually something that they'd actually thought through in great lengths. And that is the first and foremost step should be, you need to know what it is that you want to do and why is it that you want to do that. And you need to actually be able to get a sense for what it is like to be that person, what it is to be like a pharmacist, what it is to be like what is it like to be a doctor, what is it like to be a nurse. And the minute you know and you accept that reality, I would say you are on your way to actually becoming that person, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help and your own commitment and your hard work.
I think one of the two key things that obviously from point of view is from, especially when you're looking to choose a career, just a quick note on that is, one of the key things is make sure you get experience, have an exposure to what you're trying to do. And I would say from a GCSE level, try and just have an idea of what you want to get into, because you would need to perform well in your, I would believe, your sciences, in order for you to get into medicine or pharmaceutical fields. So I think, in that perspective, if you are if you're one of the youngsters, or if you're looking to get into this, I think speak to current practitioners, speak to friends and family who are in the profession, rather than making a decision from the outset. And if you, like rightly said by Aadhil Rizvi and Tariq, try to get some work experience in, and I think that will give you a scope into what kind of a field I'm getting into. Ask the right questions, I would say, isn't it? How is it to work as a doctor? How do you feel? But I think we'll all feel differently once you really get to know the nitty-gritty of each job role. And like you said, Tariq rightly said, one person, they studied for 4 years pre-registration, and after a year it really wasn't for them. So I think that it's really important, do your research beforehand and make sure that you know exactly what you're getting into, because you were spending a lot of time, like for Aadhil, you guys who spent 5 years of your time. 5 years is a long time of your youth, in order to, because if you're going to something else, you're going to have to start again another 3 years potentially, or another 4 years. So you're wasting good 8-9 years of your life. Not wasting, I would say. You're set back by 8-9 years. Very important, I think. So, I mean, moving on from that, now I think we would move into the next topic of our discussion, which is a current crisis that we're going through, which is COVID-19. And I think we've all been impacted by that one way or another. Like I mentioned earlier as well, I think it is in disguise. There are lots of blessings and positivity to take out of this. I think that, the way we live our lives and the people who we show appreciation to, and obviously Almighty Allah for keeping us in good health. I think the way we are and the society in general will change. And especially in this country, we are a very small country, and in a population which is similar to other countries who have their, I would say, a much bigger landscape, and we're closely knit together. Hence why I think we passed 30,000 deaths very quickly in this country. So from Aadhil and Tariq, just your views on COVID, your views on how it's going to impact your professions, or how it's going to impact society in general.
To you, brother Tariq.
To be honest, with COVID, I'm sure everyone knows a lot about the situation because it concerns all of us. And I think our common folk know as much as our, some of our medics do, because we may actually be concerned with the patient-specific aspects of COVID-19, whereas in the wider sense, all the knowledge around how we are affected by it, it's public knowledge, and I'm sure we're all glued to our TVs when it's news time and when it's the UK or is it the Daily Brief on coronavirus. The way how it's impacted us is, I think it's shaken us up to our roots, and it's shown us how weak we can actually be as human beings. I see it as a very strong reminder, as a very stirred reminder to the humankind, to no matter how much efforts, how much finances, and how much people you put behind working something, behind solving something. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't will for it to be solved, it probably wouldn't be solved. So it just shows us how where we stand in the sense, in the grand scheme of things. But that's not to say that we aren't doing anything to solve it, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't create a calamity or an illness without actually creating a cure for it as well. And there is something out there, and alhamdulillah, there's great work going on in the background by there's great work going on by different people, different groups, and and internationally to actually help us recover from this calamity. Sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay,
yeah, you can carry on.
That's Azam Samosas overfrying. No, it's not Azam Samosa. Adil's kebab rolls.
You can't burn the kanji, innit?
That's coming from Azam, fam. Carry on, brother. Inshallah.
Sorry, I've kind of lost track of what was the main topic we were actually focusing on.
It was more of how it has impacted our society in general, and you were talking about more of how it has given us all a wake-up call, shaking us to our roots, as you mentioned, rightly so. So yeah, just on that.
And again, the other thing was how it's impacted our health service, for example. I'm sure you can all see we were initially very stretched, very worried about how we're going to cope with this challenge that was, that came upon us very fast. And alhamdulillah, it's some, people have been there to try and support the teams, to try and support the hospitals, to try and support the doctors and the wider teams. But at the same time, it's created a we probably can't see it, but it's created a backlog of other medical patients, which we are actually starting to worry about at this point in time. 6 or 7 weeks into lockdown, and our admissions in hospital for non-COVID related issues has actually dropped by a staggering amount, by at least 50% across the country. And that is worrying in some ways, but it also goes to show that are the people that were actually coming to the hospitals, were they actually coming for a legitimate reason? So it kind of plays on both sides. Is it that people aren't coming for the very serious concerns that they may have about their health? They may have a stroke, but because they're concerned about contracting coronavirus in a hospital setting, they don't want to come. But also at the same time, are they having or were they attending A&E for just a very insignificant reason? I think it would restructure most professions, and I think the profession or the setting that will be most affected by this will actually be the NHS. And I wouldn't be surprised if we changed the criteria for actually accepting patients to A&E. I won't be surprised if a legislation came into force to say we have to pay a certain amount of money to be able to be seen at the doorstep, and then to be admitted, and perhaps after the NHS would be NHS care would be free. So it's brought about changes that we can learn from, and we can improve our practices. A lot of people are working from home. This was probably not something that they could have ever thought of doing, and they've probably seen the benefits of it. Both the employers and the employees have seen the benefits of an employee working from home and how effective it can actually be. So I think it's as great a tragedy as COVID has been, and all our condolences with the people that have lost their loved ones and that have actually suffered with COVID and have been through the challenges of having to then recover. And alhamdulillah, we are where we are, with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But like I say, there are positives to be taken from this, but at the same time, we shouldn't neglect the negative aspects of it, and we should try and adhere to all the protocols and the guidelines that are out there and have been given to us by our scholars and our medics and our politicians as well. At large, Brother Rizvi, if you please, maybe more of the medicine side of it. Probably just went on to the wider scope.
Yeah, I mean, from the medicine side of things, it's very complicated, as Brother Tariq, very amazingly put about all the issues of how it's impacted everything. Just this tiny little virus that can't be seen with the human eye. It's brought the superpowers to a shutdown. All these armies, all their power, their weapons, their money, the finest minds, Oxford, Cambridge, even my university and American university, all these the stress that they has put on the world is something that hasn't been seen, because we're in the modern world. We don't think these kinds of disasters would affect us. I actually had a question in my GCSE exam, in the first exam I ever sat in biology, and it was about the Spanish flu, the one that killed quite a lot of people in the 1940s. And I remember reading this and I was like, why am I doing a question about the Spanish flu? Nothing like this is ever going to happen. And, we got medication and vaccines, and fast forward that by a few years, and, you have this unfortunate tragedy that's taking place. I think from the medical side of things, what is there to learn? With all things in medicine, it's taught us a lot about preparation, I think. And, when it comes to preparation, how ready we are to fight these kinds of new infections. I mean, like you said, loads of people are very aware of this whole issue. But, we could probably, I'm not an expert. I haven't done much reading into it, nothing of this sort, but just my own views from what I've learned and gained. This kind of stuff can be seen a bit more likely. We've been warned about antibiotic resistance for a very long time. We have, for example, sexually transmitted infections. There's some of them that are, immune to some of our, most of our medication and antibiotics that we can give for them. So, it's a big learning event, like all things there are in diseases. The same thing in terms of coronavirus. But I would say, there's so many aspects to learn. One thing is preparation, in terms of preparation when it comes to, the personal protective equipment that we give to our frontline staff. There's another aspect of learning as to, how quick the world has to now act and depend on each other. Because, as soon as, China couldn't start sending out things, and the countries that we source all our stuff from, our gowns, our gloves, our masks. If you go into the supply world, you see most of these made in countries not in the UK. So we depend on so many other people. Even our own knowledge, we depend on so much others. Like we were part of the EU for a long time. We were depending on them for a certain amount of stuff. We're depending on the Americans. We're depending on the Asians, South America, everything. So I think the world has learned how much we actually need each other in all of this. And if one aspect of this breaks down, the whole thing breaks down. Like this is nothing new to Islam, though. Islam has said, if the ummah is in pain, like it's a body, if the tiniest finger is in pain, the whole body feels it, and it's in distress, and you want to take some pain relief. If the leg is in pain, the body can't go anywhere. Or like, it's like this, like it's like the world has now reflected that as well. If one aspect of the world is in trouble, the rest of the world feels it as well. That's the thing. So subhanAllah, from the medical side of things, of course, they're going to do their medical research. They're going to do their investigations. And, you can go on for days talking about demographics and who the people have been affected and all of this kind of stuff. But I think the main thing, what everyone has learned is, how much everyone has depended on each other, learned about each other. And I think this tragedy has kind of given everyone a lot of time to reflect and think, like, what the current position of the world is. Like, we might be so modern and advanced, but actually we're still just basic humans. In the beginning of the tragedy, everyone was like buying toilet paper and it's like the apocalypse is gonna come and things like that. So it kind of reflected that humans, at the very essence, just we're just very basic, like human. We're just basic at the end of the whole thing. We're not animals. We're just basic at the whole thing. So it's given us a lot to reflect on. Going forward, not just the medical community, but every community. Like Top Brother Tariq was saying, every community I feel would be definitely affected. More so in medicine, but almost everyone. Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. Just building on that, I think we all feel a false sense of security being in like a first world country, especially here. Thinking, you hear about a lot of natural disasters that happen all across the world, and you think about all these other things, thinking that we've got the best healthcare, we've got the best doctors and the nurses, and we can overcome that. God forbid we have that sort of thing in our back of our mindset, thinking we can get through this. And this is a very good reminder of coronavirus, making us stop thinking that we are untouchable. God forbid.
No, I think it was like a message I got on WhatsApp, so I don't know how true it is, but it was just at the start of the whole crisis when Palestine wasn't affected by the coronavirus. And like everyone was saying, for the first time in history, Palestine is making dua for the world, not the other way around. So it's very easy to show how the tables can turn, like you just mentioned very nicely. It's just like a false sense of security. That's the thing. At one point I was thinking like, are we going to have food next week or something, because everyone's running out of supermarkets. I was like, yo, is this how like people in other countries are feeling? Like, is this how it is? So
no, that is really eye-opening in that sense, where it brings out the survival instinct in people, especially the first 2 weeks was manic in the supermarket. It was every man for himself in that way of speaking into it. And it just goes to show that there's a lot of parts in the world, especially from our brothers and sisters in other countries, who are under oppression and are suffering in many ways, should I say, or even from our native countries back home. There are less privileged people. Fasting has always, time of Ramadan has always been a time for reflection in terms of, how much they do without food and going hunger, but this combination of this pandemic and this combination of Ramadan now opens up even further our eyes into how everyone's life is. You're in lockdown, you're at home, people who are under curfew, and then at the same time you have to fight for survival as well. So I think in general, like we said throughout this talk, it's opened our eyes quite a lot in this, this pandemic, I would say.
Just to kind of come back to the point that, what it is that we're actually doing to actually help the situation as well. it's, as challenging and as tragic as the situation actually is, the entire world is actually, for once united to to actually fight this virus and this challenge that we're all facing as human race. And alhamdulillah, and within the UK, we might be one of the, or I think we are, as it stands, the worst country hit in Europe. But there are efforts going on to actually find solutions and to find some sort of ways to help the people that are affected by this. For example, one of the largest medical trials that is going on is the recovery trial. You've probably heard of it in the news. And that's actually going on here in the UK. And it is something that people are actually taking up quite nicely within all hospital settings. Every doctor and every consultant that comes across these patients would actually make an effort to recruit these people onto that trial, and if they're suitable, to be able to actually take them further, so that the pool of data that's available for us at the end of it is something that we could possibly use to help either reduce the severity of this disease, or best case to find a treatment and a cure for it. At the same time, I'm sure you're all aware, vaccine efforts that are going on around the globe are probably never been seen before. The rate that it's going on at, and the teams that are kind of coming together to help put their hands together to help develop something in a timely manner, which again is a question that no one can actually answer. It'll probably be months, if not a year or two, before we actually have a viable solution to this.
So if I may, to Mr. Rizvi and Tariq, what happens next? Because obviously, going forward now, we're seeing that some countries in Europe are starting to slowly lift lockdown. I think today they announced the Bundesliga in Germany is going to restart. So they're starting to open up in certain areas. And, very interestingly, each country is taking a very different approach to one another. It's not a very unified approach. So how do you envision post-lockdown future is going to be? And if I may ask, what sort of advice would you give to, one, the professionals, so young professionals now going to go back into the workplace, but also to those students who may be listening as well, who are going to go back into school? If I may start with Mr. Rizvi.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any insider information for when lockdown is being lifted or anything like that. Of course, I get reports from hospitals and things like that. But in terms of how lockdown is, of course, that's controlled by the government, right? They're the ones that initiated it all. But I would say, coming back to the first part of your question as to, envisaging what other countries are doing compared to what we're doing. Every other country has, you have to think of it like this. We can't look at another country and say, yo, that's exactly what we want to do. Number one, we don't know the circumstances of that country. We don't know that the population in that country, what ethnic background it has, how early they prevented this, the tracing that they had. So tracing is essentially, finding out where COVID affected patients are, isolating them and stopping the spread. One country might have done that better than the other country. For example, I think I was reading South Korea has been doing that really, really well, which is why their rates have been quite low. I mean, over the last 3 months, they've only had something like 70 or 80 reported deaths, So for them, that worked out really well. So, there's a loads of factors, even for our country, there were, mistakes were made. Some things were done well, some things weren't done well at all. So, it's very hard to comment on, when lockdown will be lifted, to say the least, because I'm not an expert, I'm not an epidemiologist. Well, I just wouldn't know, right? But I would say is, caution needs to be taken as much as possible, because personally, how viruses operate, how they work, it's something like this virus, especially like many things, we have not seen something like this before, the way it can affect, I'm just hearing about personal anecdotal information from like friends of how, it's affecting. Could be an elderly person who's completely fine and a young person with no diseases have suddenly got the virus. So, we just don't know how this thing is operating. So this could still be prevalent in our community. Some people could still have it just be asymptomatic, so no symptoms. Soon as they go outside, they could start spreading it. Allahu Alam, Allah knows best. So, there's a lot of risks and, precautions must be made, because like Islam says, the number one thing is, the preservation of life. More than your job, more than your career, anything is your preservation of your life. Even when it comes to a life and death situation over, if someone is accused, like asking you if you're a Muslim or not, and saying, are you Muslim? If you're Muslim, I'm going to kill you, or things like that. There are some rulings saying, you can even at that point claim not to be a Muslim. That's the greatest crime in Islam. Some people have said that ruling's fine. This is just illustrating that point of the safety of your own life and your family must be paramount of importance. I know your job, your career, these are very all important things, but how much you can do in your own life protecting it and building it up at home. So, for example, the children, like I come from obviously like working class background. I came to this country as like a just asylum, the classical route. We had nothing, subhanallah, but I'm very thankful from where I came up. No privileges, but the only privilege that I did have was, a good raising from my parents, and Islam always there as a groundwork. And the key thing is that, of course, we have to work hard for whatever ways we need to do. But the key things, what we need to understand is our priorities in life. If you're not right now evaluating priorities, you're doing this wrong. You're now in lockdown. The main priority now at the moment is like after, keeping your own self safe, is maybe develop your Islam. Maybe if you don't know Arabic, maybe if you don't know the Quran, maybe if you haven't learned or studied properly, develop those aspects. There are so many other things to develop. Don't just be fixated on chasing the job and chasing this one. Of course, everyone's situation is different. You need job for money, to pay rent, to pay the bills. There's a lot of things that I don't know. I'm not aware of. I'm not a full-on adult yet, but there are so many things that I don't know. But I'm just saying there are many other things that other people have suffered in the past before. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions have suffered even greater than this. They've gone through even greater than this, and they're the greatest people for a reason, because they had the patience and perseverance and foresight to know how to structure and prioritize everything. I would say that's the main thing. So, I would say, stick with that. But when it turns to like, kids returning back to school, Allahu Alam, as I said, I'm not an expert, so I don't know, about incubation rates. I don't know about spread or transmission of this disease. I don't think many medics know in general, because it's just something unknown. It's like they say, oh, we've been here for like 5 months. Why don't you guys know anything? It takes, tens of years to understand the disease, unfortunately. The brain is, it's very limited as to what we can do. So, inshallah, this pushes everyone to, we can work harder in the medical community. Hopefully that can happen as a result. But, patience is, of course, is what's needed. Without patience, everything goes. Without sabr, everything goes. That's the main thing.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like we're trying to understand something within a year that would usually take 30, 40 years. And of course, with that comes a bit of patience and also, obviously, also being cautious as well. But I don't know if there's any interjection from even Hisham or Azam as well.
Yeah, sure. I think what Aadhil Rizvi said very important about doing something during this time. I mean, in terms of a lot of other people, apart from the NHS and key workers, everyone's careers and stuff is on hold. Literally, it's on pause. So while we're at home during Ramadan and stuff, to make it fruitful, be more productive, create a timetable to learn these things, Arabic, Quran, set a target. I mean, you've got so much free time, alhamdulillah. A lot of us, we don't commute. So people are working at home, don't have to commute. We're saving that time as well, working from home. And also, the things like school and jobs and travel and transport are all up in the air. And it's hard for everyone to comment on, especially what Aadhil Rizvi said. He's not been living like this, but still, they don't even know, because there could be another second wave as well. So, but on that point, best thing to do, I would say, is to make dua, listen to government advice and the NHS advice. And my run, I'm going to go on a run to stop listening to fake news. So basically, you get these audio clips on WhatsApp. They go, I just got a message from a friend that works in the government. Yeah, I'm not supposed to say this, but he works in the government in central London, saying that tomorrow at checkpoints, they're going to be handing out free chocolate or something. Do you know the audio clips? And then it just gets passed on and passed on and passed on. But the thing is, these clips and fake news affect people's lives. For example, I was reading on the Independent, 27th March today, that in Iran, as many as 480 people may have died from drinking methanol, following rumors that ingesting high-proof alcohol is a remedy for COVID-19. So they've been circulating around social media. And in that, a video broadcast on the Iranian network showed that a 5-year-old boy who had apparently gone blind from his patients giving him that liquid, and he's hooked up to a breathing apparatus currently. And that's other side of the world. And on the American side, we also have the disinfecting story, as you all know. So it's important to make the world do our bit, inshallah, and listen to proper advice from government and NHS.
Yeah, for sure. If I might, last little bit from Tariq, if I may. Obviously with this lockdown, and I think we're now into the 7th, 8th, I don't even know now which week we're into, subhanAllah. But obviously there's going to be some things we need to look after ourselves, given this, some long-term health risks that could come around because of this. I've been reading into the news a bit of mental health, especially for those of the elderly, physical health as well, I'm sure will suffer a little bit. So what sort of advice, I guess, would you give in terms of looking after these things, if you could?
The thing is, we don't know the greater picture just yet, and how it's actually impacted each and every one of us and the community at large. At first hand, I've actually seen quite a few admissions to hospital due to mental health related issues, and this is quite early on in the process. And it could be like things like domestic abuse. I've kind of soared. People seeking help for issues related to domestic abuse and other mental health issues has actually rocketed, and it's only because it may not be as a direct effect of the current situation, but people's lives have actually been thrown into a complete standstill. And we, in one way, I was actually speaking with a friend the other day to say that alhamdulillah, we are in a profession that guarantees us our future. It gives us that sense of security, whilst at the same time we are able to go to work and play that active role in helping the current situation. And to not be able to work and to not know what lies in the future, be it a week, a month, or 2 months, it surely will have a massive impact on one's mental health, and how they resort to help themselves. It would be we'll have to wait and see how it actually plays out. But I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to actually give all our brothers and sisters that the sabr, the patience to actually be able to deal with this challenge, because it's not a small thing, because people right now may be on a furlough scheme, whereas 2 months down the line they would have lost their job because their company would have dissolved, their company would have gone. So what is it to what can you actually tell those people to not worry? Because they will worry, and it will impact them. It will have an impact on their family life. It will have an impact on their personal state of mind. It will have and that will spread to the community. So all we can do is to hope for the best, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to actually lift this calamity from us as soon as He sees fit, because it is a lesson that we've learned. It is it has been an eye-opener. It has been a challenge, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to actually make it easy and to help us keep a sound state of mind. And one of the ways that we can do it, that is by engaging in regular ibadah. There's nothing better than reading a few pages of the Quran. There's nothing better than having a beneficial conversation with a brother who you haven't spoken with for years. This may be a time where you can actually brush up on those rusty relationships that you've had with your brother, with your cousin, with your family members back home. And as a result, it could be a source of energy for you. It could be something that can bring more positive energy, and it can help your state of mind. But at the same time, you're upholding the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is keeping upholding the ties of kinship. So like I say, we don't know what the negative and the full picture of it would be, but we can try and focus on the positives to actually help us see through this challenging time. And inshallah, the wave, the tides will actually even out, and we will be able to come out of it at some point, inshallah.
I think just to summarize on that part, is just maintain positivity. It is uncertain times for a lot of people. Maintain positivity. Try and ignore these fake news and try not to forward that something is not authentic, because I personally know people who have been affected by who get affected, especially people who suffer from anxiety, some people who suffer from mental illnesses. They become more, their condition worse. There's a lot of people who suffer from these kind of conditions, and when people pass around fake news, there's this many thousand deaths, it may be true, might not be true, it affects them as well. And in general, even in a normal person who doesn't have those challenges, I think maintaining that positivity, we will come out of this. I think that's the message to take, inshallah. To maintain that, like you mentioned, also, speak with people, be on the phone, connect with people that you may not have been able to. And most of all, advice to myself firstly is connect more with our Lord, especially in this time of this Ramadan, as well as during this pandemic.
Sure. Definitely, I think that's what it comes back down to, isn't it? Quran and Sunnah, especially at times like these. That's what defines us. I'm just going to move on to, we've got some questions in the chat. It just says, are you guys on the front line? And also, if you're hurt or injured, is it safe to go to hospital? I'm not sure whether you're able to answer these questions, but feel free. If we could start with Aadhil Rizvi, inshallah.
Yeah, so I'm currently not on the front line, no, because unfortunately, I do live with my family I've got members who are high risk. But the key thing is, when it comes to, what efforts and active efforts that people can do, there are quite a lot that you can do just in terms of, when you're at home and things like that, checking up on your neighbors, the elderly, things like that. Like you mentioned, self-development is another big part of a thing. But alhamdulillah, I've had the, fortune to work with the local community, SLMCC, in the early stages when we were providing up the coronavirus response to those who are less in need. And I was also in part of just the early talks of introducing some, primary healthcare screening methods for trying to find any patients who are most at risk. So we were doing that through oxygen saturation meters and just working with different GPs in the area. And that was alhamdulillah very, very insightful as well. So yeah, that's been so far my effort. I mean, inshallah, alhamdulillah, one thing is that I haven't been, been required to go to the front line and, put my life down as many of my friends and other colleagues have, which is a good thing. But no doubt it is a very scary thing to do. And it is my complete respect. I think, Brother Tariq has mentioned he's been going in, and, that's, just massive respect. I mean, what are the greater sacrifices there you can do for your community?
Just to add to that point, Brother Rizvi said, the question Brother Azam asked if one was to actually pick up an injury or perhaps have a health concern, should they actually be seeking help? Of course, 100%. You shouldn't think twice before you seek medical help, because that is one of the major concerns that is actually going around the head of the in most of the medics' heads and most of the NHS staff. Why is it that our wards are actually empty? Why is it that we don't have any medical patients, and those patients may be suffering at home? So if you have any concerns, be it small or large, pick up the phone, at least speak with somebody on 111, and they may advise you to take the most sensible action. But if it is something that you're really concerned about, it's an emergency, by any means, do go to your local hospital. It doesn't mean that if you were to attend A&E that you will, you will pick up coronavirus. That is not the message that we should actually be kind of carrying to our families and to our friends, but actually the opposite. If you have any concerns, do seek help, and if you think it's something that you need to seek, urgent medical attention, by any means, visit your local hospital and seek the right help and protect your health, which is an amana from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to you. So do look after it, and do look after your families and your friends as well.
Jazakallah, Tariq. Thank you for that. So just to summarize what he said as well, just maintain that it is okay to seek medical, but do be careful as well. Be mindful of, like Brother Aadhil Rizvi was saying, he couldn't be on the front line because he has potentially vulnerable people, high risk people, I would say. So if you do have friends and if you live with family who are high risk, if you need medical attention, make sure that you're keeping them in mind as well. Not to seek, but try and seek if you can go out somewhere and then see until you're better and then come back. So look after them as well. So sorry, Azam, to cut you off.
No, definitely no problem at all. We do have quite a few questions. Some of them are really deep. I do apologize that we can't go through all of them. Just to go on a quick discussion, we only have a few minutes left. We're already going over time anyways, but that's fine. That means it's a good podcast to go. So we're not quite done yet. So just to talk about Aadhil Malik, let me ask you a common question. I see you on social media. Do you wipe or wash your groceries after going to a supermarket? I just want to hear from your point of view. I'm one of those people who does, and if I could put in an oven, preheat the oven and put all my groceries in and cook it, I would. So what's your point of view, Aadhil Malik?
Oh, mine, subhanAllah. Well, I'd say make sure you don't bleach it. Don't go down the Trump route. No, I mean, generally, obviously, do I bleach? No, alhamdulillah, no. But going down, just generally whenever, I'm out and about, having to go outside, obviously take care, if you have the doctor and our pharmacist will be able to give a bit more better, but look after yourself. Make sure you don't if you've got gloves, disposable gloves, good thing to use, especially when handling fruits or anything from the outside. But yeah, when I do bring them in, I do wash them and wipe them. I do know people who have I won't lie, what's the word, when they pre-bake them and then they start cooking them from scratch.
Pre-cook, yeah.
Pre-cooking them and stuff. They started doing stuff like that. I haven't gone that deep yet, but alhamdulillah, as long as I'm not thinking of the bleaching side, I think washing and wiping is about much.
I think one key thing on there as well is one key thing that all of us should take into account, and everyone we should know, is if you are, especially when you go in supermarket and things like that, if you are not willing to buy a particular product, don't pick it up. So I think that's where a lot of people, they take it, look in the house, look at this and that. Obviously, you need to a certain extent, but if you're looking to take it and then leave, I would say, rather than trying to. There is a lot of transferable.
Yeah, I think especially within the fruits and vegetable side, where you need to maybe wash a bit more extra, especially if it's not in packets and you're just getting it and putting it into a bag. For sure.
It seems that Azam's just recently started washing his fruit and vegetables.
You know what? I think I need a hose pipe, just hose everything down, because I see all these videos with the blue ink. I'm not sure if you've seen them with that people with blue ink and they touch their phone and touch their hands and touch the steering. Yeah. And the blue ink transfers everywhere. And I'm like, you know what? That does sound sensible. I mean, they are taking a lot of precautions, especially in America. I've seen in some supermarkets they don't allow anyone in without a face mask, for instance. So I saw one guy who wasn't allowed in the supermarket, and he took a tortilla, wore it on his face, and put 2 holes in. So I don't know if he got in or not, but who doesn't wipe their groceries?
Just to bring some positivity to the room is that fortunately there are some reports that the virus doesn't actually last or lives very long on surfaces. That's not to say, don't be careful. There are, some reports that say probably a number, just a couple of hours. Others say it can be as long as a couple of days. So do follow your kind of regular hygiene and be a bit more careful in that sense. But I wouldn't go to the extent of having a hose pipe and shoving it down your...
No, of course. I think the thing is, since this is relatively new, there's not much we know about it. So will it last for a few hours, a few days? I mean, I have looked online in articles and stuff. There's nothing conclusive, but obviously this is new, so which makes it more difficult for people to work with and to prevent it as well. So does anyone not wipe their stuff down in terms of groceries?
Important stuff, yes.
Alhamdulillah for Islam, man. Alhamdulillah, we have this cleanliness instilled within our religion, and it's natural to us now. So alhamdulillah for that. Azam, I have a question for you. When you're washing your hands, do you do it to Happy Birthday or to the national anthem?
I do it to drill. I'm joking. No, I don't. Actually, I look at the clock because luckily in my bathroom and stuff, I've got a clock, so I look at it. I time it about 20 seconds. And I think I don't know the method. I'm not sure Aadhil Rizvi. There's a name for it. Obviously, when you go through your tongues. What's that? Beginning with H.
I don't even know. I don't even know. Okay. We were actually, the funny thing is we're taught.
Yeah. He created the method, and where you have to wipe your hands and then rub your back of your hands and things like that for 20 seconds. So I've got a rough idea, so I just time it to myself. Luckily, do about 20, 30 seconds. Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen. So I think, alhamdulillah, it's been a good session for us today. I think we could go on for another couple of hours, honestly speaking, with the discussions. But unfortunately, and we're very sorry for the brothers and sisters who have posted their questions. Inshallah, next time we will look to have a dedicated time for that. And inshallah, I think Jazakallah, and may Allah bless you both. Inshallah, make it easy in your endeavors. Inshallah, thank you for coming on our show today. Inshallah, we're looking forward to having you in the future. Inshallah, and Azam and Aadhil as well. Inshallah. So getting close to iftar time. I can smell the cutlets and the rolls. I don't think I can hold it any further. Inshallah.
Just on a positive note. Sorry, to cut you off. Just on a positive note, when the alarm went off, the kanji is not banned. It's been saved, so it's not good.
On that kanji note, alhamdulillah, a majority of our brothers who are not from Sri Lanka, because of our iftars, they've come to know kanji very well. And there's a misconception that kanji is our main meal. I
still have that.
I think Tariq might think that kanji is what we live and breathe by. Certain parts of our community do, but in general.
Alhamdulillah.
All right, Jazakallah for this. Azam, you want to finish off?
No, Hisham.
Yeah, so Jazakallah, inshallah, for your time, brothers. Much appreciated your point of views as well. So inshallah, like I said, next time we will have more time for questions and answers as well. Jazakallah, and inshallah, we'll see you guys soon, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, brothers, for the platform. It's a great work you guys are doing. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help you in these efforts, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala use this opportunity to actually guide a few brothers to the right path and to actually raise that awareness within our communities. If I've said anything that's inaccurate, I do or whether intentionally or unintentionally, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ask him for forgiveness and pass on to Brother Rizvi. So it's been a pleasure to be in your company.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair, brothers. Again, mashallah, very, in full admiration of the SLMCC, of our local community, how much they're doing. You guys as well, subhanAllah, I've seen all the photos and, I've been part of the WhatsApp groups and seeing everything and coordinating it. So, mashallah for, all the effort, and, Jazakallah, Brother Tariq, as well, for going in, helping out. That's what this country, is all about. That's what our, our religion teaches us as well so much. So, you know, all I can say is, you know, Jazakallah khair for having us on. Again, if I've said anything incorrect or, you know, if I've offended anyone, please do forgive me. Didn't mean that intentionally. So yeah, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. See you soon, inshallah.
Wa alaikum salam, inshallah. Take care.